recording. Get started. My name is Laura Ayon, and I'm the director of the Reading, Advising, and Mentoring Program, which is a TRIO student support services program here at Cal Poly. I've been with the program 26 years now in different capacities, but as director, probably about 16, 17 years now. And I did have a co-presenter today who was not able to make it, but I mentioned her because this presentation, I don't want to get all the credit for it. It was a collaborative effort. And I did mention that we are recording today's workshop. I'm going to go through a series of tips before I get started. I wanted to let you know that about halfway through the presentation, I am going to ask a few of you guys to share, and I'll tell you what when we get there. And at that point, if you can turn on your camera, and if you cannot turn on your camera for whatever reason, if you could just make sure that you have a photo. So I know some of you guys don't have a photo attached to your screen right now, but if you can do that while I'm presenting, that would be great. If you can't, because whatever your reason is, that's fine too. It's not a dire thing, but it was just this little activity that we came up with that we wanted to do. Also, to get credit for attending, you want to make sure your first and last name are attached to your Zoom account, which I think everybody is except for Abigail, but we already know Abigail, so you're good. And then before I get started, I also want to ask, what do you think that you can do to prepare now for your future career? So you can unmute yourself or type it in the chat. I'll pause for a little bit. So what are things, an idea of what you might be able to do now that could benefit you in your future career? Network on LinkedIn, absolutely. It took me a while to get started with LinkedIn. I'd get like these invites. I'm like, I don't do LinkedIn. I'm like kind of anti-social media, right? But I've enjoyed it, and it's actually has been helpful. Doing research, absolutely. Various types of research opportunities can lead you to possibly grad school, which will lead you to your career. Internships are very valuable. And if possible, the internship is paid. I think that sometimes there's unpaid internships, so you have to weigh whether or not that's doable for you. I think there's also a move away from unpaid internships right now. Going to workshops, yes, you never know, like going to career fair workshops, different campus events. You never know who you might happen to meet at one of these events and where that leads. Gain work experience, even if it's not in your field. There are transferable skills, absolutely. Soft skills. I've been, for many years, I've been to different workshops where the emphasis having to do with job opportunities, and the emphasis is often on those soft skills. So whatever your major is, whatever field you're looking to get into, you're learning about that field, and that's very important and valuable. But the thing that you can't necessarily learn on the job are those soft skills. And so we'll touch on some of those as well. Applying for jobs to practice with interviews. I like that attitude. I was telling my kids the other day that I have had very little interviews. Like, I've been in this job for so many years that I haven't had to have multiple interviews. And so the idea of doing an interview, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm like, it's been so long that I would be very rusty. So even if you don't get the job, going through that process is good practice. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. A lot more participation than I expected. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can get going on this presentation. And if there are any like tech issues or anything, or you can't hear me, just like let me know, and we'll deal with that. Alrighty. So like I said, we're going to go through a series of tips. And if at any point you have something that you've experienced that you want to chime in, please feel free to do so, whether it's in the chat or unmuting yourself. I love it when people unmute themselves. I'm going to open up the chat box so that I can monitor that as well. And then Dustin's going to help me out as well. So Dustin, if you see anything in there, let me know. Stop me. And so we can find out what's in the chat. So the first question I wanted to ask is if you can put a thumbs up if you have a job right now. So use that reaction thing on your Zoom. I can't even find mine, but if you have a job, thumbs up. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people have jobs. Some do not. That's okay. All right. Thank you. So we have some thumbs up and we have some raised hands. If you raise your hand and you actually want to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself. But I'm assuming that's just you saying you have a job. Cool. All right. All righty. So, just want to emphasize, if you're a student, whether you're working on campus or you're working elsewhere, don't underestimate the importance of your employment. And it's understandable if some of you guys haven't been able to work because of pandemic. So you may want to explain that and be prepared to explain that, like, due to the pandemic, this or that, whatever the situation might be. But during the pandemic, some people gained some skills. Like my daughter started like an online shop. She was crocheting, and my other daughter managed her social media. So if you guys can share, if anybody did something that they feel expanded their skill set, you want to share that in the chat. I don't want to underestimate that either. So I don't see anything in the chat, so I will move on. So with your student employment, I just wanted to mention, like, someone is always watching or listening, not like, oh, they have their eyes on you all the time. But you're leaving an impression with someone that could influence your next job. So a lot of different positions here on campus, they have students at the front desk. Okay, Nikki said, I learned how to manage the household on a small budget, being fiscally responsible. Yes. Awesome. Like, that could be a really good skill at an organization, right? If you're dealing with their budget there as well. Anyway, so I was mentioning that, like, a lot of positions on campus have students who work their front desk or that come in contact with others, and you do leave an impression, like how you treat people when they're interacting with you on the job, or like if you have a dining service position, you're making an impression on others. And something to think about is that you're going to be listing this job on your resume, whether you're applying for a job after graduation or maybe applying to graduate school. And you want to think about, like, what do you want your supervisors to say about you? So whether you list them as a reference or not, you're going to list this job on your application. So keep that in mind. You might ask your supervisors for a letter of recommendation. So you want to make sure that they've had a chance to get to know you, know your work ethic, your goals, your drive, your personality. I have a meeting scheduled, I think, for this Thursday to meet with a tutor who graduated in the spring, and she is applying for graduate school, a couple of grad programs. She's working full time and is planning on going on to graduate school, wants to get a letter of recommendation. We get asked for that all the time, whether it's myself or one of the other staff members. And so, there is some benefit to that on-campus job or, your student employment not just in terms of letters of recommendation, but what can you learn on the job as well. And then you guys mentioned this already, internships, but also summer jobs, mentioned research. Cal Poly has an Office of Undergraduate Research where you have a lot of research opportunities available to you. Some of them are in the form of programs that offer stipends. Thank you, Denise. Others are offered where you're doing research on another campus, and so you get that opportunity to live somewhere else. But if you're not doing research, there are internships and other jobs as well. Good job, Marissa. Got your driver's permit. That can be very helpful for getting to and from a job as well. So anyway, don't think of your summer as your time off. It's an opportunity to get hands-on experience, and you want to be organized in searching for these opportunities and start early. So believe it or not, like, you should start planning now for what you're going to be doing during the summer if you haven't already done so. Look at the website that Denise put in the chat, and you can find opportunities there. There's what they call REUs, so Research Experience for Undergraduate Students. There's the McNair Scholars Program, and I believe that application opens in December. So it is very good to start looking now, or to plan for your your winter break to be an opportunity for, or time to look for other opportunities. So, take advantage of those summers, make them count. Tip 3, be thorough when applying for employment or other opportunities. And I put this one on here because when we have job openings within RAM, we usually ask for a cover letter and a resume. But sometimes when people apply for positions, they're not including those things. And it's usually because they didn't read the directions thoroughly. So you want to be thorough in reading the directions. You want to be thorough in making sure that you are submitting everything that is asked for. Maybe it's references. Maybe it's like a sample of your writing. So whatever it may be, the application is the person's first impression of you, right? So you want to make sure that that's not keeping you from being called for an interview, or if it's a research opportunity or an internship, right? You want to make sure that you have covered all your bases. I would recommend as well that you not submit a cover letter or resume without somebody else reviewing it first. You don't know how many times I've written things and I think I'm very careful and thorough. And so I have somebody on the staff take a look and they're like, you left a word out, or this is worded really funky, or it's unclear. It's clear to me because I wrote it, right? But somebody else reads it and they're like, I don't get what you're trying to say here. So also, like resumes, you should be concise. There's keywords that are useful to use. So I want to lean to the Career Center at this point. That's a good place to get assistance in preparing your application, supporting documents. They have so many different resources available to you through the Career Center. They do mock interviews. They have like virtual, I don't remember what it's called, big something. If somebody else remembers, chime in, where you could do like a mock interview virtually. So use that as a resource. Thank you, Medea. Big interview. I'm a big something. So, you want to it's the same thing with scholarships, even though we're not talking about scholarships today, but you want to be thorough and you want to leave a good impression. The next tip is build your reputation. And so, we're still doing some things virtually. And so we want to acknowledge that that's the case. But what are some things that you can do to build your reputation virtually? And this is a question posed to you guys. So, the last couple of years, maybe you haven't been able to get as involved as you would have liked to, and things are picking back up. But, again, there may be a gap. Communication. Yes. It's communication is like can make or break you. So whatever it is, like if something comes up, it's very good to communicate, stay involved, attend everything you can. So, even today, like somebody was sharing with me that they were at a Zoom meeting last year, and somebody that they're working for or going to start working for was at that same meeting. So even though like we're doing things virtually, you can still kind of get to know people. Stay involved, being present on socials and LinkedIn accounts to show the community you are involved. Yeah, your name recognition starts to happen. Maybe not so much face because we're doing things virtually, but your name definitely. And another thing too is, you have your cameras off, but do you think that your people could recognize you more if you had your cameras on, right? Also, if you choose not to display your camera or your video, what photo are you choosing to display? So that's why at the beginning I mentioned, like, if you don't have your camera on, can you display a photo? Because then we start to put names with faces, and that starts to build up your reputation as well. So consider what scenarios might you want to have your camera on as well. So something to think about. Also, whether you're in person or virtual, you want to act and look the part by dressing professionally. So it does leave an impression. It may not, I've sat in on interviews where the person shows up wearing a t-shirt. It's like, okay, it's not going to keep them from getting that position, whether it's a job or an internship or a research position. But it does make the person pause, and you don't want to give them any reason to pause. You want to make a name. Yes, Vanessa.
During one of the virtual things I attended, an employer asked a student to stand up during the virtual interview.
Oh, wow.
So make sure, like, I don't know if they still do that, but just in case, just make sure you're fully dressed, just FYI, because that does happen. Not very often, but in case.
Thank you for sharing that, Vanessa. I have heard that as well, and I completely forgot, because I have that tendency also of like not worrying about what's below the waist, right? Well, not that like I'm still wearing my pants, but they're maybe not like pants I would wear to work. But then I sometimes think, oh, what if I get up during the workshop? And so you might want to keep that in mind. Thank you. So just consider ways that you can build a reputation for yourself. If you can go to conferences, or if you can participate or volunteer on campus. We employ our tutors, for instance, and many times there's things that come up that we have asked our tutors to do that it's kind of, goes beyond the scope of tutoring, right? And so those tutors who say, hey, I'm available, I can do it, you start to feel like, oh, okay, we can depend on that tutor. But also on the flip side, they are working on building themselves and building their own skills. And then we have to be honest with the answers. That definitely will help build your reputation, right? I wanted to share a story that is very recent, where one of our tutors was applying for a job, and Dustin happened to bump into the hiring supervisor, and they chit-chatted, and Dustin said, oh, we have somebody who wants to apply for that position. And the other person said, oh, well, we're actually already conducting interviews, so I think it's too late. And what does Dustin say? Okay, well, you're going to miss out on possibly your best applicant. And that made the hiring supervisor think for a second, and he said, okay, you know what? Have them turn in the application right away. And if they do, we'll look at the application and consider it. And so, that tutor has left a good impression with Dustin, that he like went to bat for them, and led to him letting the applicant know, like, you need to get it in right away, and that turned into an interview and so forth. So, but the point being that, they have built up their reputation. All right. This one, the next tip, is very difficult for me, and I need to be reminded of this. And that's, try to show up not just on time, but maybe a little early. Does anybody have like an example where they arrived to something late and it hurt them, that they'd be willing to share? Or on the flip side, if you have an example of when you arrived early and it benefited you. So either one.
I can share.
Thank you.
So there was this one time for like an interview. I arrived early, and it was like kind of like a group interview, and it allowed me to get like kind of a one-on-one chance with the manager who was like conducting the interview, and she got to know me like better beforehand, before the actual interview started and the other like people came in.
Nice. And what were you interviewing for?
I think it was like for In-N-Out. It was like a group interview for
Okay.
In-N-Out.
Okay. So it was for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Awesome.
for a job.
Okay. And did you get the job?
I did, but then I ended up choosing another job.
You declined the offer.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. Anybody else?
I have one.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah, so in 2018, I applied for an internship at Oakcrest Research Institute, and I actually went the day before to check out that location. And I happened to bump into the scientists that, I forgot their names, but they were working outside, and I was walking by, and I just said hello and introduced myself and told them that I have an interview tomorrow. So they were really impressed that I like went a day before to check it out. So I think that's a cool story.
I love that. Yeah. Check out the site, right? And if you're doing something virtually, start signing in a little early. You might have to sit in the waiting room for a bit, but so many times, like, we're about to start a staff meeting and one of us is like, oh, my computer is updating Zoom. I'll be there in a second. So that, luckily there's various ways of communicating, but last week I was doing going to be doing a presentation, and my co-presenter logged on, I think like 30 minutes early, and my plan was to log on 15 minutes early. And it turns out that I had given her a different Zoom link, or it was a Zoom link confusion, and it gave us time to fix it. And I had to reach out to Medea, like, how about here? I'm using the wrong Zoom link. It was a bit of a mess, but had my co-presenter not logged in that early, it would have been a little messier, a little more chaotic. So, people might not notice when you show up early, always. Vanessa and Areli shared examples of when it benefited them. But they will notice if you're late, right? So if you're on time, you're going to appear to be more reliable and prepared, right? And as Areli mentioned, you might be part of a conversation that you otherwise would not have been part of had you not arrived early. So it's not a bad thing, not only that, but it's less stressful, right? And I know this because I tend to run late. So I experience a lot of stress trying to get to where I want to get to. And so I'm trying to build in some time to get wherever I'm going. Like, I must have a reputation at church, my family, always walking in late, right? Fortunately, that doesn't have to do with my job, but not a bad idea to try to get places early. trying to move on to my next slide and it was getting stuck. Tip number 6 is kind of like 3-in-1. Sharpening your people skills, build your network, and staying connected. Strong interpersonal skills can play a crucial role in gaining the respect of coworkers, attract notice of influential people outside of your organization. I tend to be an introvert, so I have to be very intentional about, getting to know others. If you come in contact with me, I hope that I tend to be friendly, but and personable. But it really takes a lot for me to take that initiative. And so I try to impart that on my children. Like one child in particular is very introvert. Like, okay, you just need to, be intentional about stepping out of your comfort zone. And does anybody want to share like what they see as the importance of a handshake? I think that we're not doing as many handshakes as we used to in the past. I know like at church, I don't handshake unless somebody else is reaching their hand out to me. But what do you learn about a person through a handshake?
I think it displays a person's confidence and like how they portray themselves and how they see themselves, like, like confident or shy.
Yeah, that's a good point, Marissa. Anybody else? Can a handshake make the difference? Yes.
I feel like a handshake can make a huge difference. It can be either negative or positive. Sometimes you walk away from the situation being like, wow, that person really squeezed my hand. But I think it can show a lot if it really depends on, you don't want your hand to be like limp and weird, you want it to be strong, comfortable, hold eye contact. Sometimes you can practice at home with friends or family. But I really think it makes a huge impression personally.
Thank you, Kiana.
Mm-hmm.
And Vanessa, did you want to add?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
No problem.
Also, just making the eye contact and smiling, that also makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I can't remember the situation where my husband was shaking hands with somebody, and I can't remember who it was, and they squeezed his hand, and so he kind of squeezed back, and then that person squeezed harder, and it like became like this competition or something, and he was like, whoa. So, as you guys have mentioned, it could be a positive impression. It can also leave a negative impression. So not a bad idea to practice that if you're not in the habit of shaking hands, or haven't had a lot of opportunities to shake hands with people that you're not familiar with, right? Also, part of your people skills is listen carefully to people. And I think Vanessa and was it Kiana? I hope I pronounced it correctly. Mentioned eye contact. And I think when you're listening to somebody, when you give them eye contact, that's demonstrating that you are listening, that you're paying attention. And then another tip would be to practice being a clear and effective communicator. And then when we talk about building your network, when you have the opportunity to do so, like introduce yourself and share what, share a little bit about yourself. So what I want to do right now is I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if anybody is willing, maybe a few of us, introduce ourselves and share like what we do for fun or an interest that you have or a hobby. Not all of them, just pick one. And if you feel that you connect with that person or you also do something similar, comment in the chat. And so it's just this little exercise where we want to see how we might connect with people that we haven't even met before, right? So if you're willing to share, unmute yourself, share your name and then what you do for fun or an interest or a hobby that you have. And then the rest of us if that's something we do or we want to comment on, put it in the comments.
So one of my hobbies is I like to collect taxidermy butterflies and moths. This one's called the Madagascar sunset moth. I don't know if you can see it. But I really enjoy learning about butterflies and moths. I think that they're really cool. I also enjoy gardening with my dog, but she does more of the destroying than the gardening.
So as an example, I put in the chat, my cousin also collects insects, and she puts it like on her Instagram, and she has them up on her wall in her house. And then I was gonna put, I'm horrible at gardening. Leah has a dog as well. Anybody else have anything in common with Marissa? Let's see, Marilyn also has a dog. Denise shared her dog also loves to dig in the yard as his gardening. Yes, I have some diggers right now too. Areli has a dog. Natalie also likes gardening and has dogs.
He's coming into the frame.
Oh, there.
Jupiter.
Just see a nose and an eye.
Yeah.
Oh. And then we have others who love to garden and have dogs. Kiana does not collect butterflies, but I think they are very amazing creatures, and always take the time to watch them when I notice one flying by. Jane says Jupiter is a cute name. And, oh yes, and Dustin had an experience with the monarch butterfly that emerged from the chrysalis in his house. There you go, Jupiter. Come on, join us. All right, who wants to introduce themselves next and share? Jane.
Hi, I'm gonna turn on my camera if it goes. Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Jane. I am a ramp tutor. I've been a ramp tutor for quite a while. What I do in my free time, I love to crochet. I think everyone from August knows I like to crochet. I have little projects with like tote bags and everything. I like to watch shows, and as my profile picture had, I love to work with livestock animals. So I work with the livestock animals that are on campus. So that's like my comfort zone. I love working with them, the goats and the sheep.
All right. Casey loves to watch shows. Anybody else connect with Jane? Areli loves to crochet. I'm trying to get more involved with livestock animals. Katie asked, what kind of shows do you watch? That's probably, oh, livestock shows, right? Is that what you guys are referring to?
Or like TV shows. I watch
okay.
I watch
I missed that.
anime. And then with livestock shows too, I compete. So I compete in livestock shows as well.
All right. And Leah can learn how to crochet from you, Jane. I've tried. I don't get very far. Okay, let's do one more person. Introduce yourself and what you are interested in or what your hobbies are.
Okay, I'll go. I just turned on my camera. There we go.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I'm also a ramp tutor. This is my first semester tutoring, and it's been really exciting. Things I like to do on my free time is go hiking. That's probably my favorite thing to do. It's very stress relieving. Also on my free time, I like to explore California. So I like to go on day trips. I just let the maps take me. So yeah.
Okay. Nice. We got some hikers in the house. Awesome. Have you heard of Henniger Flats?
No,
Wow,
I've
Adelaide, where is that?
I think it's in LA. It was a bit far from me, but it was so worth it. I loved the hike at the end. So rewarding just being on top of the clouds and seeing it from above.
I drive a lot through the Los Angeles National Forest, and my goal is to like stop and hike, but I was driving through. And I've been to Yosemite, but it was snowing, so couldn't do much hiking.
Mm. Yeah, it's been years since I've been to Yosemite. It's time to go back. Marilyn wants to have a hiking outing, and Casey set up to the SCPP letters. We did do, you can't call it a hike, we did a nature walk. When was that? Like October, Denise? Do you remember? So that was nice. We did a nature walk across campus, and some people, I think, Casey, were you part of that group that went up a little bit towards the letters?
We went a little bit, but we didn't get very far. It's a long uphill hike.
Yeah. So those of us were like, oh, that's a bit much. We went back. All right. Henniger Flats is out in Altadena. And Natalie hiked in Utah in the snow, wants to see the beautiful historic barn. Nice. I love hiking in Utah. I've been twice. This past summer, I had the opportunity to hike in Iceland. I'm like, okay, one and done. I don't know if I'll do that again. I'm getting too old for this. Echo Mountain in Altadena is nice. Hiking in Colorado. Has anybody tried that? I love this. All right. And so even though, these are interests of ours and not necessarily something that we have in common in terms of profession or our major or careers, I think it's an exercise to just kind of demonstrate like how, that's one way that you can start creating a network is with something that you have in common with somebody else. Excuse me. So something that if you can find something that you have common ground with, that you can start a relationship kind of based on that. And then the other item was staying connected. So what do you need from people you meet in order to facilitate staying connected? So you're going to need their name, their contact information, maybe a reason for following up. And so what are some possible reasons for following up with somebody that you meet? LinkedIn. So you might want to follow up to ask a question, right? Like somebody mentioned that they've gone hiking in Colorado and suddenly you have an opportunity to do so. You might reach back to that person. I remember Denise went traveling and somebody else on campus has been to the same locations and they met up to kind of learn from she learned from a co-worker of ours, some places to go on her travels. So again, it may not necessarily stem from, having to do with your job, but sometimes getting to know somebody on a personal level will lead to other referrals or help in some form. So you want to basically try to establish a relationship with others in your field or in the field that you want to go into, and make sure you start building a name for yourself with the positive impression. You might ask for letters of recommendation or referrals for grad school or a job in the future. So it does help to stay connected. We are fortunate to work with a lot of students, but a lot of times once students graduate, I don't want to say we forget about them, but we're not in constant communication with them like we used to be, right? And so every once in a while, one of them will reach out to us, any one of us, and touch bases with us. And it's just always good to maintain those relationships, because you never know when you might need to call in a favor, right? And you guys have mentioned LinkedIn as one way to do that. And maybe even other forms of social media can help facilitate keeping connected with others. Because I think gone are the days when we used to like call each other and talk and chat. But like I have one student who graduated. Sorry, Denise, I'm just seeing your message in the chat now. That is how she met the Pope. And I just love that, because she connected with somebody who had traveled there before. And they said, oh, this is how you might be able to. You're not definite, but these are the steps you should take. And she took that person's advice, and lo and behold, she got to meet the Pope back in May. But well, I was on another train of thought, and I've lost it now. But oh, I was saying that I have this one student who graduated, I think spring 2021. And every once in a while, she and I still touch bases. She checks in every so often. How are you doing? I'll ask her, how are you doing? She's like, okay, I'm looking for a job. Okay, I'll keep an eye out for you. Can I list you as a reference? Yes, you can. And I'm able to say, yes, you can with confidence, because there's not this big 3, 4, 5 year gap since the last time I talked to her. And talk to her, even a text message or an email is a form of talking, right? It's a form of communicating. So, just when you graduate or when you leave a job too, we don't close the door when you leave a job. Like, keep that door open, to keep the lines of communication open, because again, you never know when you're going to need to call in a favor. And I'm not saying you're maintaining relationships just so you benefit, but you definitely can benefit from it in various ways when you least expect it, right? All right, our next tip is be your best and be present. Even if you're right now doing a job that you think is not, what you want to do in the future. Again, everything always follows you, right? Even if you don't want it to. And what does being your best mean? And sometimes that can differ by generation, right? Right now I have younger kids who kind of help me evolve, but eventually they're going to not be younger kids. And but sometimes they'll tell me like, no, you don't want to word it that way, or just various tips that they might provide me with. So that can go back and forth, right? And I'll share tips with them. My middle child just got a job, and so I've shared tips with her. I'm like, okay, you're going to training this weekend. Let me see what you're going to wear. Let's make sure we get there on time. And vice versa, where there are certain things that they may give me tips about to better maybe connect with our students. What are the expectations of your employer? I think if you're not sure, you can ask, because how are you going to be the best at that job if you're not sure what the expectations are? What do they value? Like, is it more important to them that you're engaged and contributing in meetings, or is it more important to them that you're meeting deadlines? Because if I have a deadline to meet, I might close my door and just work. But maybe that your employer wants to see you more engaged, or maybe they want to see you seeking more professional development, or being a team player, or following through, or asking for help. So if you're not sure what it is, find out, because what you think is your best might be a little different than what your employer is expecting. But be aware of what's going on in your job and within the organization. So, RAMP is an organization, but we're part of a bigger organization, right? We're part of a bigger group. We're part of academic affairs. And then beyond that, we're part of Cal Poly. So it is important that we try our best to not just be aware of what's going on around campus, but sharing that with each other so that we're all kind of up to speed. Take pride in your work. And when you do that, the quality of your work will show it. So, being present is important as well. I think we talked about that a little bit in one of the other slides. But, being, again, like I can get like honed in on my work and I'm very present in my work, but am I present within the organization? Am I listening when others are talking? Am I engaging? So your best is knowing what you're capable of and then challenge yourself to do even better than that, and to grow, because I think that's, being your best is great, but then taking it a step further and saying, okay, where do I have opportunities to grow? And that's, a challenge, can be a challenge. And when we find that we're not doing our best, maybe take a step back and ask yourself, like, why am I not doing my best? What's going on? What's impacting my ability to do my best? And sometimes just being aware can make a difference. Or maybe you realize, okay, this is why I'm not doing my best. How can I address that? How can, maybe you're in a funk, and then you realize, okay, you know what? It's because I have this deadline looming over me. Or maybe if I talk to my boss, I can get somebody to help me with that project and get it done quicker. So just, taking that time to reflect on, okay, what's going on right now, maybe in my life, and is there a solution that I can work out with my coworkers or with my supervisor so that I am fully present and so that I am giving my best. Okay. Running out of time here, so I'm going to go faster. I apologize. Share credit whenever possible. If you're recognized for a job well done, give credit to anyone else that contributed to that task, even if it's a minor contribution. It demonstrates that you're a team player, and the person who helped you would probably appreciate being recognized. They didn't do it to be recognized. I mentioned at the beginning, I didn't come up with all these slides on my own. I did have a co-presenter. And so I recognize Patricia, who's the director of Arches, as having contributed to these slides. Number 9, be alert for opportunities and act on them when they come up. Pay attention to opportunities. Sometimes they come knocking on your door, and sometimes they come knocking at a time that you're like, now's not a good time. But stop and think about it. Like, okay, now may not feel like a good time for me to take up this opportunity, but how can I prepare myself for the opportunity, or how can I ensure that this opportunity can come up again in the future? And if you're following the other tips, then more opportunities are more likely to present themselves. And our next one is keep learning. You're a lifelong learner. I had this, I know it sounds very naive, but I had this impression that all I had to do was get my bachelor's degree. It didn't matter what I learned along the way. As long as I had that degree, like my life was going to change. And then because I would get a job and I'd be good. But 26 years on the job and I'm still learning. And you don't just learn on the job, you can find other opportunities. I know some of my staff members and some of our tutors, they look for other opportunities where they're taking a class, like a woodworking class elsewhere, or they just will take advantage of opportunities to learn, not just here, but maybe on their own, or a dance class. And dance is so good for other things, right? Stress reliever and so forth. So you want to continually acquire new knowledge in your field and stay on top of developing trends. And then the last tip is find a good mentor and follow their suggestions. Find somebody that you feel that you can trust and respect. Ask questions, ask them for constructive feedback, follow their advice, establish a positive relationship, because you'll find that sometimes they'll indirectly assist you, such as mentioning your name when an opportunity arises. And while it's mostly a take relationship, look for opportunities to give back to your mentor as well, whether it's, by helping them or acknowledging or thanking them. We are out of time, and so, but if you want to stick around and ask any questions, I will stay on. And I think Dustin has dropped a survey. I apologize that we ran out of time so quickly. But if you can click on that link in the chat and do the survey. Is it working, Dustin? Might not be working. Oh, Jane said it works. Awesome. Thank you guys for your help. Thank you again for joining, for engaging, for participating. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day and good luck in your future career.